Hi, I wanted to make a really quick video to talk to you about sketch marks. Sketch marks are marks that we use to create texture and often value. So that's why this says sketch marks and shading, because value is used for shading. There are multiple different types of sketch marks, and again, sketch marks are just a combination of marks put together that can be used with any art medium, but is most often with ink or graphite. So one of the types of sketch marks is hatching. Hatching is when you have lines that do not cross. For instance, they might be horizontal lines. They might be vertical lines. They might be diagonal lines. Maybe it's a combination of lots of different lines going in lots of different directions. They can be long lines, curvy lines, jagged lines, short lines. The type of sketch mark used is generally determined by what you're drawing. What type of mark would best represent what you see? For instance, if you have hair and you're trying to draw that, it's probably got a little bit of wave to it. Whether the person has long or short hair or curly hair will determine the type of sketch mark that you should use. The cool thing about sketch marks is that when they are used, they can also create the illusion of value. So you could potentially create an artwork that has nothing but sketch marks in it. The closer the marks are together, the darker the value appears. That's called optical mixing, which just means that the lines become closer together and they visually blend within your brain, your eyes telling them that they're close enough that it's one value. So I'm not pressing any harder. I'm not making my lines any bolder or wider, thicker. I'm simply making them closer together to create the darker value as I go across this simplified value scale. Remember that a value scale is just a scale that shows the range of light to dark with a color. In this instance, it's a neutral, black. So we have solid white to solid black. Now I'm just finishing this one because I want to give you, in case this is an assignment that we are completing in class, but I'm not going to go through and do the others for you. I'm just going to talk about the variety of sketch marks. Over here to the side I have a circle, and I want to do a little bit of sketch mark within that circle to create the illusion of form. So I'm shading using sketch marks. If we're using hatch marks, then again we might have some long ones and some short ones that add a little bit of dimension to this circle to make it look more like a sphere. Remember, closer together is going to create a darker value. So I'm just going to add some in between as the sphere would curve around from the viewer and get less light from the imaginary light source. So that is just a really quick demonstration for using hatch marks to create value in a circle look like a sphere. Cross hatch marks are essentially hatch marks that cross. Any marks that you make that cross over each other are called hatch marks, whether that's vertical, horizontal, diagonal, a combination of each. Perhaps you're using little hashtags or number symbols, or just random marks going in all different directions that kind of make X's or just these loose forms. Again, depending on what texture you're trying to represent, that's kind of how you would decide which sketch marks are best for your project. So again, I'm not going to go through the value scale, but do know that the closer our marks are together, that more that optical mixing kicks in and the darker the value. And again, we would add our cross hatches, around the edges of our circle to make it look more like a sphere. Stippling is when you have dots close together, if you want it to look darker, to create our texture and value. Notice my dots are not circles. These are circles. They're not a sketch mark. They're a shape. Notice they're not sloppy. When you make them sloppy like that, they turn into hatches. So neither of those are acceptable. The only thing I want to see are neat, controlled dots. The closer together, the darker the value. If you are driving your classmates crazy with this tap, 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 tapping noise, just put some paper underneath, and that's going to soften the noise that comes out of it so that it's not quite as annoying, because I know you wouldn't do that on purpose. Scumbling is essentially controlled scribbling. So our scumbles can be really neat and organized, all about the same size and the same width apart. Perhaps they're really loose and random, organic. Some are small, some are large, some are close together, some are far apart. This is a great way to create the texture of things that are very natural, like hair, if it's really tight and curly, or perhaps the texture of shrubs or bushes seen from a distance. And again, closer together, optical mixing, darker. Random marks really just means that you're combining multiple other sketch marks or using other things aside from just lines and dots to create the illusion of texture. For instance, combine a hatch mark with a stipple. Or maybe you want to work on something that's kind of more non-representational. It's not intended to look like anything realistic. And you want to use a pattern, perhaps, made out of stars. Or maybe hearts. The possibilities here are endless. There's an assignment that I like to teach with my Art 1 students in which I often use letters, like your initials, and when you write them over top of each other, it creates a whole different look. You almost can't even tell that they're letters. So again, that's just a random version of combined sketch marks. And smooth shading is not really a sketch mark, but we talk about it when we discuss texture, because if an object has a smooth texture, then you might use shading to create the illusion of form with that object, but it wouldn't have sketch marks per se. So with shading, if we're smooth shading, we would use the pressure of our pencil, lighter pressure to make lighter value. You can gradually press more firmly to create darker values. Or you can layer over top of your drawing to get those values darker, and that helps to make them appear smoother. There are tools that you can use to make this look really smooth so that you don't see any of the pencil marks, but they often create kind of a smudged look. A lot of students use their finger, and that almost makes it look too smooth depending on whether or not you have natural pencil in the rest of the picture and just smooth, smudged areas in certain places. So again, it just kind of depends on the look that you're for, whether you want to use a blending stump or a tortillon or perhaps a paper towel with your finger under, or your finger over a paper towel to create that blended look. But again, quick review: sketch marks, marks that are combined to create the illusion of texture and value. Hatch marks are our marks that don't cross. Cross hatches are our marks that do cross. Stippling is dots. Scumbling is our scribbles. Random are combinations of the above or original designs. And smooth shading is when you don't have any real textural marks. I chose a picture to show you from the internet that I felt like did a great job of showing a variety of sketch marks combined together to create a finished artwork. So in this picture, we have, and I wanted to tell you that I was unable to find the artist's name. I believe it's pen and ink, but I hate that I'm using it and not citing who it's from, because that's not okay, but it's still a great picture. So again, we have thin hatch marks close together, very evenly spaced to create this sky. For our clouds, we kind of have these curved hatch marks. Notice that as the clouds appear to go farther back, the hatch marks looked shorter and closer together, and that creates a darker value compared to where they are farther apart, and it makes a lighter value. That's particularly noticeable here in this big dark section of this cloud. In this field, hopefully you'll in the video, there are curved lines that are hatch marks that go the length of the field, and they almost look like where a tractor has come through and plowed. But these curved lines help to create the illusion that we're on the side, that the ground starts out and curves up and over. When we look at our trees, we have a lot of scumbles. Close together scribbles for the darker areas, farther apart scribbles, lighter areas. For instance, here and here. The roof of our house is made with crosshatches, so we have horizontal lines to create the slats in one direction and diagonal in the other to make the roof look more sloped. And then we have the siding of the house, which is kind of done with these kind of dashed horizontal hatch marks. One of the things that I really liked about this picture is how the grass was formed. You really feel that texture of grass created in the illusion by using the hatches and cross hatches. So notice that where the grass is intended to look closer to us, it's longer. The lines go the direction that the grass would grow naturally, towards the sky. They overlap a little bit. They're not perfectly vertical. They're very random and natural. As we go back into space, farther from the foreground, a little more sparse, farther apart, and shorter. So the grass looks farther away because the hatch marks aren't as long. Over here you have some that are closer together to create the shadow from the hay bale, apart where the sun is shining on the grass. On our hay bale in particular, what I really liked about this one is that the lines, the hatch marks that were used, this hatch mark for your sketch mark really creates the illusion of movement. Our hay bale is round, and so the artist used curved hatch marks to create the illusion that the hay bale is circular. So they curve around the shape of the hay bale. Darker by being closer together here where the sun would not shine on it, farther apart to create the lighter value where the sun is shining. But you really get the illusion that this is curved because of the hatch marks. In addition to that, the way the hay is kind of wrapped around the center to create the bell, you have curved hatch marks that go in a circle around the center point on the hay bale. And again, these are just hatch marks, but the direction and the length of them, the curve of each mark, so the angle, helps to really create the illusion that this is a hay bale. So again, I don't know who the artist is, but I do think that they did an excellent job of combining the hatch marks, cross hatches, stipples, and other marks together to create a finished artwork.